Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works in the Cosmere. I'm Eric, but also known as Vasher today because I am old, or at least my knees feel old. I'm grumpy, and I'm a teacher, so I'm Vasher today. And also joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm Yesteel today.
Yeah.
Mostly through process of elimination, because the other ones fit their scholars. Yeah. But I'm also happy being the only one that's still alive, except for
still.
Patrick.
Yeah.
It's okay. The Nightblood sequel will come one day.
And you'll die then. Also joining me is Evgeni.
Hi, I was gonna vote to be Vasher because of my also teacherly and scholarly nature and magnificent voice.
Classes?
Well, no, but I've taught people. Also, I was an academic tutor at college.
Yep, you're dead.
I think he wins.
Well, I mean, like he like slightly. Look, okay, I like Vasher.
No, Vasher's great.
But then they were like, "Hey, you're gonna be the villain of the story, and so you're a Denth. Also, you're handsome and funny."
Yeah. You're handsome, funny,
part.
and you would do things for money.
I would do things. I would also do things not for money. Yeah, I've done things for money. I'm not proud of all the things I've done for money. I've also done things for things that are not money, and I am not proud of all of those either.
Also joining me is David, who is back. He has a webcam that doesn't suck. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yep, it's working, even though I got the old one to work very briefly. So I thought about bringing that back for all time's sake. But I guess
good.
I am.
The webcam that needs to warm up.
Well, you don't want to just like start her. You got to let it run for a bit.
No.
Anyway.
You gotta speak
I am
softly.
Apparently, I exhibit traits of Arsteel, so that's exciting, which means I'm a good swordsman and perhaps zombie-like. So that's just a great compliment.
And lastly, joining us is Grace.
Hello, I'm Shashara today because I am contractually obligated to play every female character on Shardcast.
You know, we do have other females in our repertoire. It's just they're busy.
They're all less dedicated than you, Grace.
That's true. You are very dedicated. By the way, guys, we're talking about the 5 scholars today. The 5 scholars of Nalthis.
Guess that yet?
Yeah.
Wait, this was not the Starsight reaction? Oh, the intro sketch now makes sense.
So Grace, I must, with you being Shashara, I must protest you giving away the secret of giant death swords to everyone. So I'm afraid I have to murder you with Nightblood.
What?
That seems like an overreaction.
No,
Yeah,
I'm gonna kill my wife with an awakened sword and essentially vaporize her. And also, I'm gonna do it in front of Denth. That's my favorite part of that situation.
I see flaws with this. Like,
look,
this
I'm
seems
sure
a little extreme. Okay, so I will do many things for money, and I will do many things for other things. This seems like you got to be getting some good money out of this to do that.
I'm just saying that you're biased towards Shashara, Denth, and you can't let that secret out. Even though, like, you'd have to be of the 9th heightening to do it anyway, so, like, probably a lot of people can't do that, but, you know, that's fine. It's fine. So, anyway, Grace, man, this would have helped if I had, like, a blade or something. But
You
you're
don't
dead.
have Nightblood?
No, but I do have this black pen. Yeah, nice.
Does everyone have a knife except for Mage's sitting
This
here?
is a pen.
Right. Okay.
I also have a knife in my car that I haven't taken
go
out.
get that.
Vasher, why?
Yeah.
Vasher won.
You'll be seeing that at the Academy Awards.
All right. Well, problem solved. No awakened swords for everyone. That's my motto.
Yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
I do know the secret.
Yesteel, I'll murder you too. I've murdered the rest
You have to
of
get
people.
these two first, so
Yeah, I'll get there. That'll be the end of the show. Okay, so let's do now that we're done with that, that just casual murder. Come back next week, Grace. We're gonna talk about the 5 scholars, and so David, because you haven't been on here for so long, give us a quick rundown of the 5 scholars.
Oh, good news. I'm glad. I'm ready for this. All right. So 5 scholars, Warbreaker, Nalthis, if anyone is just a little confused where the origin is there. They're actually not that mentioned by name that often in the book as the 5 scholars.
Like 3 times. It's very minimal.
But essentially they were way back when Hallandren was still Honnold, I believe it was what it was called.
Yep, that's right.
The 5 scholars returned. They were in the cult of the return that will one day become the Biochroma religion that will rule Hallandren.
The iridescent
tones.
Oh yeah, there we go. That's it. And so at that time, awakening knowledge was still in its infancy, and the 5 scholars really began studying it pretty intensely and became very well known as scholars of awakening. So, and again, from the intro, the 5 scholars were Vasher, main guy from Warbreaker.
I made
along with Vivenna.
Horrifying statue, lifeless, encased in statues.
Stone.
Yeah.
The Kalad's Phantoms. He's got like 7 names. Talixin.
Vasher has a lot of names.
He's got a lot of names. Zahel later.
I call him Vasher the Many-Named.
Yep. He married eventually Shashara, who was another really famous, like really well-known scholar. He thought that she was the best of them. She was the one who may have figured out the one breath lifeless command. I think it's likely. Some people dispute that.
We'll talk about that.
And she was also the one who created ultimately Nightblood with the aid of Vasher, but it really was like she was the one who did the core design for that.
She did the awakening.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And her brother was Denth. How do we know that they're siblings? Not really clear, even though they both returned.
We'll talk about that too. That's definitely weird. There's 2 pairs of siblings who both returned. That's so bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Denth and Vasher, best buddies. I don't think we really know anything about anything Denth specifically developed.
In the 5 scholar, like what he actually did as a scholar, no, we don't.
Yeah, but they were pretty tight up until the beginning of the Manywar.
No, not
actually,
the beginning.
Most of the way through the Manywar.
It was the end.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm trying to keep it all the threads straight here.
I know. There's a lot going on here.
Mm-hmm. The other 2 were a set of brothers, Arsteel and Yesteel. Yesteel is the one who invented Iker alcohol, which is the stuff that they put into the lifeless to keep them running really well. And he also will know the secret of awakening type 4 entities like Nightblood for some reason, eventually.
Yep.
And his brother Arsteel is a really good duelist. And
how's he a scholar? I don't know.
Else. So the 5 scholars actually did manage to leave Nalthis at some point as well. We know that several of them traveled at least to Roshar, saw shard blades, which ended up becoming the pattern that they were trying to build Nightblood around somewhat successfully. Pretty cool.
Yep.
Well, it could have been
somewhat.
Cool. Yeah. And
in some sense, it's a strict upgrade.
Yeah. Things were going along well until the Manywar, when the various awakening developments that they had created and other like economic pressures eventually led everyone to a wide scale like awakening war with like lots of lifeless and awakened catapults and cool stuff that one day we'll hopefully see in flashbacks in Nightblood.
Oh, dude, that'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm. But that during the course of this time was when Shashara ultimately awakened Nightblood, used it in the Battle of Twilight Falls, where she killed a bunch of people. Like a lot of people. That's what Lightsong sees in that painting in Warbreaker.
Yeah.
Is her using Nightblood for the first time. Yep. Vasher was not a fan of that. He tried to talk to her about it, I think. I hope he did. And then but either way, if he did or did not, then he killed her so she could not tell other people how to make swords like that because he was worried about that.
Yeah.
And then essentially he and Denth surprisingly were less close after that.
Really? I never would have guessed.
I know. Yeah. And then they fought a bunch. And yeah.
I always thought homicide brings people together.
Mm-hmm. And then Vasher was really sad, and he ended the Manywar by bringing his army home and giving up his breast for the first God King.
Yep.
At least some of them.
To a priest, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, I think who presumably became the first God King.
Yeah. And yeah, he retook his land, and the threat of his armies ended the Manywar.
Mm-hmm.
Let's, really, the history of the Five Scholars is really easily done by talking about Vasher, because Vasher's killed so many of them at this stage. But we'll just go through the scholars one by one. And so let's talk about Vasher. There's a lot of really interesting things about Vasher. One of the crazy things to me is that Vasher is like one of his more recent names.
Yeah.
Denth and his Denth is like, oh, he calls himself that, and is like, it was like some inside joke that Denth did not find funny.
Which someone has asked Brandon about this, and it's because Vasher was the name of someone they knew.
Yeah.
And Denth does not appreciate Vasher using that name.
Yeah. The weird thing with that I've always thought, just like going off of that name, Nightblood thinks of him as Vasher.
Because
weird.
Brandon couldn't have Nightblood going, hey, Warbreaker the Peaceful. hey, Peacegiver the Blessed.
Or Strife Lover, or Khaled.
Yeah, if you want to explain it away, you can say because of the bond and he's currently the holder, maybe he's a little more amenable to how Vasher currently calls himself.
So just in case you guys forgot, Nightblood, the first moments that he was awakened was really heavily imprinted on him. And so he always thinks that Denth will be pleased with Nightblood and things like
Shashara is alive in his head.
Yeah, always. So it's like, why would he be called Vasher? That's just, like, of all the names that would happen when Nightblood's awakened, Vasher is not one of them.
Yeah, I'd be because I do not believe Brandon has been asked about this.
No, I didn't find anything about it.
What his answer to that would be. It could be as simple as like, yeah, it probably shouldn't be Vasher, but like that's the way I wrote the book.
Yeah.
But there could be something deeper there that would be interesting.
It kind of does feel like it's just an inconsistency, like when you think about it that way.
Peter!
Yeah. But
well, I'm out then. One inconsistency, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, what happened? It's not clear when the Five Scholars went off-world, if it happened pre-Manywar or like during the Manywar. We can discuss that, but basically with Vasher, a returned predicted war, and Vasher did a preemptive strike across the mountains, and that quickly spiraled out of control. That's what happened. It's not exactly clear specifically what his role was, but Hoyd talks about, Khaled, Strife Lover, these names for Vasher, and he comes up with like 3 cases of what could have happened. The Hallandren say that the royal family made Strife Lover one of their generals, and I think that probably makes the most sense. If he's striking as a preemptive strike, he's one of the 5 scholars, very smart. Like if he's developing these awakening things, I think that makes a lot of sense. And maybe Vasher, like as that general, like just assumed more power as things spiraled out of control or something.
Yeah, it just seems like a military coup, kind of like the royal family fled. He seized control of the government and already had control of the armies, and just kind of did what he wanted to do.
So I know you guys have been looking into Warbreaker things for a while for the wiki. The early history of Hallandren and Idris is not necessarily something I think a lot of listeners are going to remember, because it's a very
that is true. Yeah, let's
a very obscure thing.
It's pretty obscure because we had to do research to look at this
it's
up.
mentioned once, and like it doesn't come up anywhere else in any relevant context. So why don't we do that?
Yeah, Hallandren used to be called Hanald. and the royal family, because it used to be a monarchy, they eventually fled, and they fled to Idris, and so that,
And the royal family were the descendants of Vol.
yes, because they have the royal locks.
Well,
first,
Yeah.
technically of Vol and like his wife.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned like they fled with their house. So like the other people in Idris are like the descendants of like their servants and like all the people that went with them. So not everyone there is of royal blood. But
Yeah. So like Idris is actually named for the royal family.
for the house of Idris.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, and so that kind of splintered the nation because, like originally Henald just owned those highlands. And if you read Hoid's story, it's really not clear the moment that they did flee, because there are very conflicting stories, but at some point they did flee. There's like one thing where they're like, oh, they experimented with awakening, and
they probably sponsored the Five Scholars. Like,
I mean,
they're like, yes, like do awakening research for us
and get us more powerful. Like I think that's very natural if you have these brilliant people.
But then like they see like, oh wait, this scholar we have been sponsoring and made one of our generals is seizing power. Let's run away, and now we hate awakening.
Yeah.
That would be internally consistent, at least. Their
very internally
dislike of
consistent.
it.
But I mean, that's not like directly confirmed, and you kind of have to do some inference.
Yeah, Hoid's being unhelpful, even though he was probably there for it.
Well, Brandon says Hoid doesn't necessarily. He gets all the important details right, but like he doesn't know everything that happened.
Oh yeah, no.
So like he gets the general like shape of the story correct. So basically, what happened when the Manywar started, the Five Scholars split up. They went. Some went to different nations. Some had the power of lifeless that only needed one breath to awaken, which was a very big deal, and like you doubled your armies basically. And Denth actually joined Vasher's side. Denth started as a peacemaker. He tried to stop the war, but eventually joined Vasher's side. And
peacemaker, but not a peace giver.
Yes. Presumably Shashara went with Denth to Vasher's side and was like, man, Henald is very powerful in the Manywar if you get 3.
I was always under the impression that Shashara went with Vasher to begin with.
That was kind of mine as well, but I'm not sure if there's any specific evidence.
There is not specific evidence of that. Like, I could definitely imagine that. The thing is that's easy to forget, is that Vasher and Shashara fell in love right before they made Nightblood. And so it wasn't at the beginning of the Manywar.
They got married right before.
No, they fell in love. They were researching Nightblood in the time that they fell in love.
Okay.
Man, that must have been such a hot research action.
Yeah, and
like say Tin Boil 2.0.
Yeah.
Well, 1.0 probably.
Another reason why like the one breath awakening command for lifeless is so important is that before that it took 50.
Yeah.
So like that's a major disparity.
Yeah. Vasher does imply that the 50 breath ones are probably better in some ways.
Probably.
But it's just easier because breath's expensive to just use one. Shashara actually gave away the command for making one breath lifeless, which is kind of weird because Hoid's story talks about, wow, one breath lifeless are a major advantage. Like, who did Shashara give the information to?
I wonder, especially with her later interest in just unveiling the secret of Type 4s.
Yeah.
Of Nightblood, essentially. I wonder if she was very much pro sharing all information and like disregarding possible consequences, like in the mindset of that scientific discovery belongs to everyone and it is everyone's shared responsibility to use that.
I definitely think that's totally reasonable. I would not be surprised if that was the case. I think that's very likely.
Shashara was Karl Marx.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just she didn't give it to everyone though. Like, maybe eventually everyone knew, but like Hoyd was like, whoa, that was a big disparity that like was a big deal in the Manywar. And then it seemed like Arsteel and Yesteel went to other sides.
I think they went together.
I would presume they went together. Maybe to Kuth and Huth, and Kuth and Huth were destroyed in the Manywar. Gotta love Kuth and Huth, where we know basically nothing. They're across the mountains from Idris. We know that, but that's about it. And they were destroyed. That's it.
So far,
they still live there now.
There have been 3 names that you guys have mentioned that I disagree with the pronunciation of.
That's fine.
I say Huth and Cuth, but
what?
Huth
So-
and Cuth.
I think Windy said Talaxon. I say Talaxon.
I say Talaxon. Yeah.
I say
One of you said Khaled. I said Khalad.
Oh, I don't say
I
Khaled.
would also say Khalad. Or I would say Khalad.
Say Khalid.
Khaled.
No, I say Khaled.
And there was one more just now. I forgot.
Idris.
Probably.
Oh, Idris versus Idris. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I say Idris. Yeah.
It's Idris.
Yeah, I don't.
Idris.
Look, I do say Idrian, but I say Idris. Sometimes those change. They
Well,
do.
yeah, like
to be fair, I do the same thing with Elendel.
Yeah.
Elend.
So the creation of Nightblood was kind of near the end of the Manywar. We actually don't know how long the Manywar, what length of time that actually was. There's no indication of how long it actually was.
Although, given the overwhelming advantage, like single breath lifeless would give Hallandren, I can't imagine it would be like decades.
I think it was a decade at most. Like that's kind of my impression. And it was a very like a decade war is really long. Like that's a really, really long war. If you think about Earth history, like that's a long war.
Yeah. Although I think the one breath lifeless wouldn't be like overwhelmingly helpful early on, because you do need like corpses to make them. So it would take some time you wouldn't be able to instantly double your army.
True.
So you'd have to like wait for it to kind of burn down the original army before you can build up a new one.
Yeah.
And they also like you really gain the benefit of the lifeless when you get to the point where it's war of attrition. Like, yes, you do get the numbers, but the big benefit of the lifeless is that they don't need to eat, they don't fear, they can just keep on fighting.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not that they are like super powerful soldiers in a like one-on-one type of combat. It's just that you can send them and they can just keep going.
Yeah, if you want to be like, burn the city to the ground, they're really good at that. Like, you can just come in.
Dalinar.
Dalinar is also very good at that.
He would have loved lifeless.
He did. In fact, turn many people into life. Well,
yeah.
Halfway there.
So, I'm kind of thinking, if we think that the Manywar is no longer than a decade, that the scholars going off-world happened before the Manywar. That's my theory.
I definitely think that.
Yeah. It feels weird to imagine them abandoning like their factions to leave the planet to go on like a scientific research mission.
Yeah,
like they couldn't have known about shard blades as a weapon when they left, you know?
Yeah.
And they would come back and like not immediately try to like I can see a situation where they see the shard blades, they go, oh, that's kind of cool. And then they come back and continue doing whatever research they were doing. And then the war starts and they go, hey, we need an edge.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
We need an advantage. Remember these swords that we saw in that one place with the giant crabs? We can try to do that.
Yeah.
So I can see that happening. It seemed, and I think that depends on like how they felt and how they thought about the shard blades as they saw them. Like if they went there, they saw shard blades and they were like, wow, cool, that's really mysterious. We have no idea how to make that, but it's really cool. Then this turn of events seems likely. But if they went there, they saw shard blades and they were like, ooh, how can we make this work? Then you would expect the moment they come back for them to start like working on that.
I would expect that, like, once they got back, they would start doodling, like, ideas of, like, how they could do it. But it wasn't, this is what we were researching, this is what we're trying to do right now, until, like, they needed that edge. Yes, this would be cool, but what use is it right now?
So they went to post-Recreance Roshar. We have a word of Brandon on that. That is like, we wasn't before the Recreance. But because they're going through the cognitive realm, they probably saw Dead Eyes and they could probably figure it out. I think if you go through the cognitive realm, it's easier to figure out what's going on with Shardblades because you can just talk to Spren, right? Even though if they didn't want to talk about it too much. So they knew that it was like a Spren thing. I think also there's some logical. It's not clear how they get all their breaths for this, because in order to awaken Steel, you need the 9th heightening. That is a ludicrous amount of breath, by the way. They needed to be up there in order to experiment with commands, because Instinctive Awakening's like 7th heightening, I think? Maybe 8th.
What is 9th?
9th is Awakening.
7th.
Stone and metal.
9th is 20,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so like that's a lot.
Government
At the end of the
sponsorship.
war.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, yeah. At the end of the war, we know that Vasher had about 50,000-ish.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And Roshar had at least 20,000, right? Before she drew Nightblood. Asterisk. Right.
Well, that's a big asterisk there.
You get to wield Nightblood a long time. Solid, like, 5 minutes.
Dude, that's... Anyway, well, I think we'll get to that point.
Yeah,
that's a scary moment in the history of Nalthis.
Yes, it really is.
It's a scary moment in the history of the Cosmere.
Yeah, that's wow.
Like, if you consider Zeth hearing screams from murdering lots of people, like Shashara murdered a lot of people real quick. Like, way worse than Zeth in that sense, right?
Well, but also Roshar is like, I think we know that the reason Zeth hears the screams is because of things like specific to Roshar.
Oh, do we?
I kind of forgot.
I'm pretty sure we do.
Spiritual mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
going
It is
on. I don't know
spiritual
if it's
mumbo jumbo, but it's
specific.
but it's Rosharan. Like Brandon has said, something is wrong with the afterlife of Roshar,
Oh.
and that's why
We're gonna
Yes.
steer back, but see,
I dispute
the
that.
problem, the solution is that Nightblood just vaporizes the souls, and so easy, Nova screams because they're not in the spiritual realm. They're just vaporized. Problem solved. We don't actually know the mechanics of what specifically happens when Nightblood kills like that. So they had a ludicrous amount of breath. What happened in the Manywar is that Yesteel eventually created Ichor alcohol, which definitely gave an advantage to his side's lifeless. I would assume everyone knows the one breath lifeless command at this stage, and Hoyd just is a little wrong. So maybe that's a detail Hoyd gets wrong, because maybe in the beginning that was a big advantage, but like that discovery when Shashar revealed it, you know, like
It could have taken time to permeate too. You know what I mean?
True,
like it's not that she sent like a letter to every single kingdom. It's like, hey, this is how you do it. Like she probably just told some people and gradually
just put it in a newsletter.
Yeah, right. You know, with the letter, the Cosmere letter is easy. But Shashara felt that she was kind of shown up by Yesteel. And I like how I'm always pronouncing Yesteel different every time. That's my favorite part. And then she, like, very seriously was researching Nightblood. And apparently they practiced. Don't know how you practice creating Nightblood, but eventually she awakened Nightblood and figured out how to do it. Spent just a mere 1,000 of those 20,000 breaths to awaken Nightblood. Bargain deal. Made Nightblood, and as we said, used it in battle, and Shashara wanted to give that info to everyone, and Vasher was like, no, that is not good. And then after Vasher, he conquered his nation back. That was one thing that he said. He retook control of Hanold. with his phantoms, and then the threat of his armies prevented it. It ended the war. It's like, well, we don't want to fight those again. So,
Because a big thing about him is that he switched sides.
well,
I think we know that.
he didn't actually switch sides.
He just like stopped advocating for his side and like ended his conflict.
He just like it's as
He
if
swaps to neutral. And it's like, yo, the war needs to end now.
his allegiance to his country is the same, but he no longer wanted to fight.
Yeah.
Like he was
Isn't-
always fighting for Henold.
Isn't the story, like from a historical perspective, that the way they tell it, there was Kalad the usurper,
Yeah.
who, because of the name, I assume people claim that he usurped the
Raw House.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, essentially, yeah, and like
Yeah.
military coup type of thing, and then they place him against Peacegiver,
Yes.
whom they attribute to be like a general from well, I guess it's still the same country, like because it's a
It's a
civil
return
war
name.
type of thing.
I don't think they ever go into where Peacegiver came from.
No,
just
they
that
didn't.
he ended the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, and basically Vasher's like, yeah, history didn't know what to do with me, and like they didn't understand why I didn't want to fight anymore, and so they just
Mhm.
called me something else. Like that's what happened.
Okay.
So same person, same country, he just didn't want to fight anymore.
Yeah. So it's like someone doing like historical research would be like, this doesn't make sense. Where did this Peacegiver guy come from? And
Yeah.
probably with some research would be able to figure out like, oh wait, we just called Strife Lover a different name. And then probably go, that's stupid.
Yeah. That might even be like better known in scholarly circles than is commonly
True.
told in the sort of tales Hoyt is sharing, you know?
Yeah, and interestingly, he gave his 50,000 breath. Presumably that wasn't even like necessarily all of them, because then he survived for 300 years after that, right? But he gave 50,000 breaths to the first God King and was like, "Hey, I want you to keep these safe because I can't be trusted with this. But you should keep them in case I need them." That's the part that gets me, is like, just in case, I would like these back maybe eventually.
Yeah. And then also cut your tongue out. That'll be fun.
No. That was
Well,
the part of the priests did. It was like, that's what they were like. Oh, not use. Let's cut out their tongue. Easy.
That's
And
what
then
it
just-
turned into, though.
That's what it
You
turned
know-
into.
You know what gets me about this?
Yeah.
Is that this entire thing started with Vasher going, "Hey, Shashara, maybe you shouldn't give the people a super powerful weapon that they can just do whatever they want with."
Yeah.
And then 3 years later or whatever, he's like, "Hey, random priest on the street, here are 50,000 breaths. I hope you don't do anything bad with them."
Well, I think it was within the
See-
same year. Just.
Whatever.
But
And I do think there is a slight difference. Like Nightblood, that's pretty bad. Like you can't, no matter what Nightblood does, it's bad. Like it's destroying stuff. Whereas the 50,000 breath, that's just potential. Like that could be good, that could be bad. It just is.
Yeah. And like it also doesn't make you invulnerable. Like, like Susabran made the point when the army was escaping that he's like, I could go chase them down with my 50,000 or more than 50,000 at that point breaths, but eventually one of them would get me. Like he can't fight a whole lifeless army on his own.
Yeah, it's not like Stormlight that it just automatically like heals you if you got stabbed. Like that is definitely not the case.
Well, but that's technically true if you're wielding Nightblood as well.
Well,
Like,
well,
it
yes,
doesn't
but like
make you invincible.
it's more the problem that if the secret of the swords get out, then like that's destruction on a much wider scale.
Mhm.
Than a single sword. Vasher's like, okay, I have to kill Shashara. It is unacceptable for this to get out, and I'm just gonna keep Nightblood because I don't trust anyone else with it.
For a while.
And,
Well,
And I agree that Nightblood is more dangerous than somebody with 50,000 breaths, but it's still a massively it's an incredible source of investiture.
But you're also assuming Vasher is in his right mind at that point in time. Like, he just killed his wife. So his thought process is probably our top.
He is very biased against Nightblood, and when he named it Nightblood, like that was not its original name, right? And so he probably is not thinking ultra clearly about Nightblood. He probably feels that no one else could hold Nightblood, because he would figure out really quick that, hey, if I give Nightblood to people die real quick. And so it's not like really good to give that to people because they will just die.
Which eventually evolves into him literally throwing the sword at people and walking away.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I love the scene in the restaurant where, like, it's one of the first Vasher scenes after the prologue.
Where he just leaves it there.
He just leaves it. It gets immediately stolen, and he's just like, I'm talking with this priest. I am not worried. Then when he leaves, it's like, oh, there's like 5 people dead. I'll just like pick it back up. And that's just what he does. He literally doesn't care because he knows people will not be worthy, basically. And
sometimes I forget how nonchalant Vasher is about death.
Yeah.
And another reason, like, I think he would want to give away the 50,000 breath is that it would make him super visible. Which, if he just wants to fade into the background, that would not be possible.
Yeah, that's true.
Can you suppress 50,000 breaths? I know you can kind of at least suppress some of your breath attributes sometimes.
You can suppress a divine breath.
Yeah, I don't think you can suppress regular breath.
Regular breath.
No, I think I thought that was how Hoyd was not appearing to have breath when he has breath and he's doing his awakening. I'm fairly certain that that's a thing.
I think he does appear as, like, I think in the prison scene, Kaladin notices something weird about light around him. For a brief moment, and then discards it.
It's possible. I did work on the Hoyd article pretty in depth, and I don't recall that. Like, I read that scene a few times, but it's possible that I missed something.
I don't quite remember.
But it's also on a planet where people don't expect colors to be brighter around a person. Yeah. And he's only at the second heightening, I think.
Mm-hmm. In my recollection, Brandon had said something to the effect of Hoyd is suppressing it, but I could be misremembering.
Okay. I don't quite remember that.
And he can also, like, always dump him in an object.
Yeah. He and Vasher could do that as well. I think it's just that he didn't want to be in charge. When you have so much breath, you have so much power. Like, it's not just magical power, it's essentially political power because you can use that magical power. And he just didn't want to be in charge. Like if he's just roaming around with Nightblood, he doesn't have political power to screw things up. And he's probably like thinking, wow, everything I did sucked. I caused the war. I killed my wife. Denth hates me now because I had to kill her. But I still feel like that was the correct thing for me to do because would be really bad if the secret of Nightblood got out. But, like, I caused nations to crumble. I cannot be trusted with this kind of power. But also, none of you idiots are gonna get Nightblood because I definitely don't trust you with that. But, like, he just doesn't want the political authority anymore. Like, that's another aspect to giving up his breaths. I feel like it's like, I don't want my phantoms. I don't want my breath. I don't want to be in charge.
So we actually haven't talked about his phantoms at all.
Oh yeah, let's talk about his phantoms.
So a lot of Vasher's successes are with tricks. Like,
yeah.
So, like, the phantoms are statues, but with bones, encasing bones.
Yeah.
So it's like he awakens the bones as a lifeless, and then it's a statue that it is animated without having to awaken stone.
Yeah, which is much more expensive. So the stone's basically just keeping the bones in the right shape. That's the point.
Which makes sense. That's a very scholarly thing to do. Like, find the path of least resistance. Like, okay,
You're essentially making
a
a stone armor.
yeah.
Shard plate. Sorry. Not really.
Yeah.
But they
I mean,
would have seen
no.
that too.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, yes, like he probably could have awakened stone statues, but it was
Like
far
one or
more
two.
cost effective
Yeah.
to do what he did.
I can get
Like,
several
that's, like-
hundred of these rather than 2.
Yeah. So it's like that's like Vasher is like the smartest of the return of the 5 scholars, like for that reason. Like it's not just like big flashy stuff. It's like how do we use this in a sensible way scientifically?
Although it's also problematic from like physical perspective or almost like physiological perspective, because stone is like I don't know, listeners and viewers, if you've ever seen stone, but I have, and it's not very bendy.
Oh, well,
Or
he explained
twisty.
that.
Oh, did he?
There are actually small seams in the stone. It's not all one piece. And the breath that's actively in there when they're not being used acts as like ligaments and whatnot to hold it in position.
It's a lot.
So,
It definitely is a lot more breath.
yeah. So there's still breath in those statues even before they call it. It's just, it needs a little more to actually activate them into motion. They're just sitting
Oh,
in
that's right.
a resting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's the other aspect. You need the 50,000 breaths to like activate the statues. You need to give it a little bit more. That's right.
Kind of circling back a little bit, it is interesting to think about how Vasher's arc a little bit has to do with trusting other people with power, because he ultimately didn't trust Shashara with power, and at the end of the day kind of comes around and trusts Susabran with this pretty awesome power, which is the Khaled's life, his lifeless, where he can essentially take over the world if he wants to.
Yeah, it's the thing that ended the Manywar.
Yeah.
A threat of
that
those
army.
were so scary. Man, I don't want to be on the other side of Hanald in the Manywar. Like, you have Vasher, you have Shashara, Denth doing who the crap knows what Denth's doing, research-wise. But, like, you have the Phantoms, then you have Nightblood. That is not a good time to be against them.
No.
I mean, yeah, I think that's why the Pan Unity was losing.
Yeah, in case you didn't know, the opponents in the Manywar were not only just Kuth and Huth, but the Pahn Unity, which might include Tedradel. Right, David?
Yep,
Yeah.
put that on the wiki.
Oh yeah.
They were
finding-
they were opponents of Hallandren in the Manywar, but we don't know if they were part of the Pahn Unity.
All these names, I love the locations in Warbreaker that are mentioned like literally once or twice that you're like, I have no idea where they are. I don't know anything about them. Tedradel's mentioned more than once.
And a map in the 10th anniversary edition of Warbreaker.
There is?
Nice. I said I hope.
Oh, I've always wanted a Nalthis world map. I think that'd be super cool.
Let's talk about a few other things Vasher did. There's one. He doesn't just use tricks. He knows some pretty crazy awakening commands, like deleting memories with awakening.
Though it's self-awakening.
Yeah,
'Cause,
it's
like-
really weird.
It's like so
Why
he
don't we
knows how to
recap that
delete
scene?
his own memories, and then can tell other people how to delete their own memories.
Yeah, he tells this girl who was kidnapped to say these words and mean them, to like essentially delete what happened from her memory, which is we could talk a lot about this. I just wanted to remind people that Vasher knows how to do that. Denth didn't know that was possible. Well, Vasher just alludes to, I know the commands that you can do this, which we don't see a lot of mental commands with Awakening. It's kind of a different side of Awakening that we've never really seen before, right?
Denth also doesn't think, or at least doesn't tell Vivenna that this is possible, that you can split your breaths. Like,
Yeah,
she
well,
tells
that's
her
lying.
if you're probably.
No,
That's definitely lying.
No,
he's
in
lying
the
a lot to
annotations,
her.
Brandon makes it very clear that Denth is specifically withholding information because he wants Vivenna's breath. So it's not that he doesn't know. He very much knows and hopes that people don't notice. Like that's what he's trying to do.
I think it's kind of interesting too, because with commands, like, there's the spoken part, but the mental component is also like a very important component of when you're saying a command. So it must not be all that complicated of an envisioning thing, because he manages to get it across to this little girl pretty quick. And it's not like a really complex mental image of what she's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Which it seems like to me, it would be very complicated because we don't really see breath used like that ever.
Presumably it's just complicated because we don't know the trick.
A couple of things. So one, this could be an example of, it's a relatively common fantasy trope, I think, that, I guess it's not even a fantasy trope, it's just a human thing. Children are not burdened by a lot of the abstractions and a lot of the complexities that an adult might have. And so it may be a lot easier for a child to awaken with enough breaths and whatever. Because of the nature of the command. So it's less about visualizing something complex in your head and then putting that in words, and more about like something that's just weird to an adult, but something that a child might have a very easy time believing.
I'm kind of down with that, honestly. Like
with like less constraints on what they imagine to be possible,
Yeah. I like that.
Do we think that has anything to do with how like animals and children like recognize returned like intrinsically? Like they might not recognize them as like returned, but like they're
comforted by them.
They're comforted by them. Like
it could be a similar thing. I think maybe like both drawing from the same ultimate source, which is that they are still kind of children, so they can sense that fragment of the divine a little more clearly.
Yeah,
because for them it is it is their god. That is what they are comprised of, and they're walking up to a very large pool of that same energy. So that would be familiar,
And there's definitely reasons why people would call returned gods, but I kind of want to do a Weirdness of Awakening podcast this year, because the deleting the memories is so weird. Reread that scene again. Like, even coming back to it, it is still really weird. Yeah. Even with our honestly more Cosmere knowledge.
Kind of reminds me of hemalurgy just a little bit. Just like they're kind of just toying, they're just tweaking something in their cognitive aspect or in their spiritual aspect with a command.
It actually reminded me of soul forging.
Yeah, that's really true. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, you're like awakening yourself to like, yeah, all right, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, self-awakening. But it doesn't seem to have like consumed breath.
Well, it flickers.
It flickers, but it's not like her breath was consumed in the awakening. It's like it was affected. It possibly diminished.
I took it as just like a small diminishment, like just like a tiny like flicker, just like a slightly less bright, and you kind of almost couldn't catch it. But
I don't remember the scene very well, but I was under the impression that Vasher gives her a little bit of breath.
No, he doesn't. There's no indication that that's the case.
Okay.
Vasher was always in Way of King's Prime, and so this was a prequel. So
he was a Stormlight character.
Yeah. Vasher found soul casting very interesting, which is actually very amusing because in Way of King's Prime, soul casting was actually called Awakening. Actually, but he had to change the name.
If you want to read some of those chapters, they are on Brandon's website. Some of the Way of King's Prime chapters where you can read Hallandren being trained by Vasher in the original form.
Yep. There've been a few conflicting words of Brandon on how many planets Vasher has been to. There was one where it's like, fewer than a half dozen planets, but then there's another that he said just Roshar and Nalthis.
I mean, technically not incompatible.
That's true, but
yeah. Though there is one. Granted, it's about Denth.
It is about Denth. Yep.
But it makes sense that like they could have traveled as a group. So if Denth made it to Scadrial, it doesn't strain credulity that Vasher could have made it there.
Oh, did Denth make it to Scadrial?
I believe so.
Let me see. I think the question was about Scadrial, but Brandon answered that Denth spent a lot of time on Roshar, but didn't travel much off-world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which makes it sound like other people might have done more, if Denth was not as widely traveled.
Yeah.
Has Denth ever been to Scadrio? Has Denth been to Scadrio? So Scadrio is one of the planets that's easier to get to in Cosmere turns.
Okay.
I will say this: he did not travel to the Cosmere widely, but Scadrio is one of the easier planets to get to.
I feel like what it is Brandon's not really decided how many planets Vasher's been to, and so he's putting like a soft cap of 6 on it. But he's like, he's definitely been to Roshar. I might throw in he's been to somewhere else I haven't really decided yet.
Like the fact that he answered one time in assigning that is 2. That's not like ultra high level canon here. Like or whatever.
He has occasionally given an answer to a question, and then when that question came up later, like at a different signing or a different year, he would like raffle or give like a more vague answer, forgetting that he's already responded to this.
Yeah, that's very common.
He gets a lot of questions.
Really?
He does.
He doesn't know how to awaken with Stormlight, but he does use Stormlight as like breath for his sustenance as a return.
Weekly thing.
And one thing that was interesting is that Vasher took on the name Zahel to evoke Nahel in like a connection to divinity. That's a thing.
He's still just a little pat himself in the back. He's a bummer, but he thinks he's cool right now.
I'm still a god.
Yeah.
He's still connected to the divine.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
He has a spark of the divine within himself.
Yeah, he does. So, Vasher, man, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about with Vasher. Let's not really talk too much about the Roshar in part, like post Warbreaker, because there's a lot of speculation we could do. But we got to get to the other 5 scholars. So,
you mean the other 4 scholars?
The other ones of the 5 scholars, the other 4
4
scholars,
or 5 scholars.
Yeah, the other 4 or 5 scholars. Yeah, the 5 is capitalized, the 4 isn't. Come on. In the transcript, it'll make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Shashara, but we kind of did like the quick recap of Shashara. But I kind of want to talk about the thing that Shashara and Denth are siblings. Arsteel and Yesteel are siblings. What? That's weird. Like, did one return first? This is really weird.
Also, Denth has the royal locks.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to get into that.
Shashara would have the royal locks.
Yes, she does.
Assuming they are siblings.
Yeah.
Would she? Because I guess the whole only people who can inherit get the locks is more there to suggest like people weren't the same. Like if there's the son, like if there's a prince and like a cousin, then the cousin might not get him, but the prince might because of the direct inheritance.
Well, like I think all of the king's potential heirs end up with the royal locks, but only whoever ends up inheriting will have children that present the royal locks.
Yes, exactly.
So like if Fafin left the priesthood and had a child, that child would not have the royal locks.
Exactly.
One of Dedelin's other children.
Sure.
So like presumably they were
bizarre.
It's really weird.
It is weird.
It's such a like cognitive thing. Speaking realmatically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which like it really makes you think like, what if like, let's say the Colons are the royal family of interest and they have the royal lock. Gavlar is king. His children have the royal locks. Dalinar would have the royal locks, but Adolin and Renarin would not.
Right, exactly. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So if Elokar and Yasna and Elokar's son all died, Dalinar would become king.
Oh, that's
what would Adolin and Renarin spontaneously manifest the royal locks?
I kind of think so, honestly.
I kind of think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I know I've asked Brandon this before and he's raffled it.
That's so weird and crazy, though. You're totally right.
I think it's kind of like a chunk of investiture that travels and transfers between people. I don't mean this literally, but like it's a power that is given to different people based on that like inheritance condition.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So that is actually kind of interesting though to think about, because that means depending on when Denth and Shashara returned, the Idrian royal family was running Holland. So they were when they drove the Idrians north. Holland, whatever it's called.
Holland.
Holland's a nation in Europe. Hanald.
No, I didn't say Holland. Hanald.
You
I
said
thought it was
Holland.
Hallant, like Hallant. I always have
Sounded
it
like
backwards,
Holland.
but I did not say Holland, for the record.
And it makes sense that you would think that because Hallandren,
Yeah.
my previous name was just
Yeah.
shortened.
Anyway, back to what I was saying. They would have been driving either their direct relatives or the descendants of some of their own relatives north when Vasher sees control of the kingdom, because they have the royal lock, so they are part of the royal family.
Mhm.
They are, but they could have been like. It's not necessary that they were participating in the whole driving of the royal family away.
I know, I'm just saying it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's particularly relevant.
The thing that gets me about the siblings returning is if one sibling returned, then the other sibling knows who the original one is, and so they would know their original names, right?
Mhm.
Like,
We don't even know that the prohibition against knowing about your past existed back
well,
then.
that's also true.
Yeah. It definitely struck me as a more recent development in the iridescent tones. Yeah.
Like, would they know their original name?
Mhm.
Like, who?
I almost feel like
first?
they were probably killed in the same event and returned together, being siblings, and then we're just kind of like, "Oh, you're also members of the royal family."
Yeah, but
We're
then it
going to tell
happened
you
again to
what you're
two
about.
others. Like,
Yeah, but at least they're not royals.
well, that we know of.
My thoughts on this are that I think they like all of this fits in a very specific agenda of endowment,
Probably, yeah.
where for some reason she thought it beneficial to return these particular siblings.
Yeah.
Or maybe returning of siblings was just like a thing that happened a lot more back in the day. Because again, because she always returns people for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that reason may be like a grand Cosmere kind of thing, or it could be more of a not a whim, but a much smaller, minor type of thing. Like hey, I wanna
Calm, so you're
return-
coming back to cure her daughter of a
Yeah.
plague.
Yeah.
Like very
Yeah.
small.
Shashara making
oh.
Nightblood, a little more effect on things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although we should see what her daughter like does in the future. Maybe
True.
Nightblood 2.0. Who knows?
Well, that's true with Cosmere, yeah.
But maybe at the time, Endowment thought that returning siblings advances her agenda more because they are people who naturally, potentially, work together and like
Mhm.
have chemistry and things like that.
Mhm.
It's possible Endowment just wanted like this exploration of awakening to begin, you know, and like having people group up together and be like, okay, all right, we're gonna figure this out because maybe Endowment wants Nightblood to do something on Roshar. Like, there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I can see that.
Speaking of return names, Shashara has one of the most badass return names of Glory Singer.
It's true.
Oh, what a sweet name for a return.
Yeah. I've in the last couple of months I've realized that I actually like the word glory a lot.
Okay.
No particular reason.
Yeah.
It just sounds cool.
But like Glory Singer, like raising Nightblood, is murdering tons of people. She must have had the ninth heightening. Like that's clearly a thing, but
Yeah.
who knows how many breaths were consumed when she used Nightblood in the battle? Like, whew. Using Awakened
I
Swords.
have the answer.
Yes.
Too many.
Too many. Yes, that is the correct answer. That's right. Hilariously, there's hints of Shashara trying to teach Nightblood what's evil and doing really badly at it because Nightblood just doesn't understand. And so Shashara's like telling Nightblood, you shouldn't swear because that's evil. Like things that you would say to a child, like, no, you can't swear. That's bad. Don't do that.
You can't call people stupid. That's bad.
Yeah. And so like that's Nightblood's like, oh, Vivenna, you shouldn't swear. Shashara told me never to swear. Like, that's hilarious to me.
Yeah.
It actually isn't clear whether Shashara made the single breath command for Lifeless, because as we'll talk about, Yesteel is, quote, the master of Lifeless commands, but it doesn't make sense for Yesteel to have the single breath Lifeless command, Because if he did, then Hanold has the single breath lifeless commands, and their opponents have it. But Hoyd was clearly saying some nations had it, others didn't. And granted, like maybe the Pahn Unity, like if Arsteel and Yesteel went to Kuth and Huth, right? The Pahn Unity maybe didn't have any of the 5 scholars, if 3 of them are with Hanold, right?
Yeah, I definitely kind of see potentially it's starting out like really fractured with a lot of different kingdoms kind of vying with each other over this conflict, and then it kind of solidifying into 2 more opposed sides as opposed to having so many factions towards the end.
Yeah, like Arsteel and Yesteel could have gone to a lot of different kingdoms. But it's not clear, but Shashara definitely gave away the single breath lifeless command, and Vasher thinks Shashara was the most talented of the 5 scholars. Who didn't just resort to tricks. I think it's probably likely that she created that. I have this headcanon that Yesteel and Shashara were like the scholarly peoples who were like always trying to one-up each other. And so like Shashara's like, I made the single breath lifeless command, what's up? And Yesteel's all, hey, I made Ichor alcohol. And Shashara says, well, fine, I'm gonna make a shard blade. What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah. It's like they're the worst kind of nerds fighting over who's going to be valedictorian.
Yeah.
And it would be a good show up. Like if he's the master of lifeless commands and she's like, hey, I just made this command 50 times more efficient. Like that's a big diss right there.
Yeah.
And it's possible lifeless have more, varied specialized uses than we've really seen. There's a lot of ways you could be a master of that.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Well, one of the things that would have been or would be in the Warbreaker sequel is Jules is taking Arsteel's corpse, Claude, to Yesteel to try and get his memories back. Because she thinks that he could. So, like, there's a lot of depth to Lifeless that, like, we barely get in Warbreaker. So I think there's a lot of stuff we could do.
Brandon actually talked about a potential Lifeless POV in the sequel. So there's at least something dimly going on in that, in their heads.
Yeah, he has said that they're more aware than people give them credit for. And keeping them in the dark is a
bad idea. That's right. Exactly.
I wonder if they're going to be, if they're going to end up being closer to like the Parchment.
Maybe.
That would be sad.
I mean, Brandon likes those parallels like that. That's very possible. But who knows? Like, there's a lot of depth on that. There's really not a lot else about Shashara, even though that she's the creator of Nightblood. Like, we've talked about the creation of Nightblood and that there's weirdness. And so maybe Shashara knew things that other people didn't, that Viv and Vasher didn't know. But
that seems likely.
That definitely seems likely. Because, I mean, she has to do the visualization in her brain, right? So
that's one of those things that additionally, like in addition to the possibility of, the whole ruin thing, makes it seem like you almost couldn't recreate Nightblood again because Shashara is gone, I feel like that visualization was probably pretty unique.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Yesteel a little bit because Yesteel knows how to make, apparently, the Awakened Swords, like Nightblood. In my headcanon, I feel like maybe Shashara just like, hey, what's up? I created Nightblood and sucker like that, and maybe Shashara just told Yesteel, and before Vasher could kill her or something. Like if they're constantly one-upping each other, I could see that happening. But we do see another Awakened Sword that is not like Nightblood, and that's Vivenna's blade. And so I wonder if Yesteel does not know how to make Nightbloods, but does know how to make blades like Vivenna's blade.
That's kind of my assumption at this point, is that that he can make Awakened Swords, but they're not like Nightblood.
Yeah.
I've also been working under that. Like Vivenna's is Yesteel version of Awakened Blade.
Though part of that is something went on with the creation of Nightblood.
Yeah.
So that we don't know whether that was outside interference or if Shashara did something.
Yeah.
So it's like Vivenna's blade being Yesteelian make.
Yesteelian make. That's incredible. That's why Brandon's like, you know what? I need to have two brothers with steel in the name.
It's made out of Yesteel.
Seriously though, totally true. There was an annotation where Brandon said, "Yeah, if Hallandren attacks Idris, Yesteel will reveal himself. He will reveal the secret, and then the Idrians with their allies, with a bunch of awakened swords thirsting for blood, will go to Tetalier and destroy it." That's what the annotation said. So it's like, oh, maybe Yesteel does know more than like, that doesn't sound super great.
Yeah, that was what Blightsong was seeing in his dreams throughout all of Warbreaker, was that attack.
War. Yeah, right. That Tetalier was burning. Yep, exactly. And Shashara isn't known to wear red scarves. Just so, not the girl who looked up. Matt asked
it's
that.
not part of her fashion aesthetic.
No. Yesteel is rather interesting. He is known to be sneaky.
Sure.
Well, he also hid for a long time. We don't know really what his involvement exactly was in the Manywar or how he felt about it ending, but Vasher at the end of Warbreaker, he's like, whoa, Yesteel has finally come back out again. And so like he maybe has been hiding a really long time. Yesteel, apparently a tyrant, was trying to restore Cuthanhuth and recruited Yesteel. So get ready for another God King tyrant, magical guy. Well, probably not. But we have no idea who that is.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's about it. He created Pahn Kahl, and then recently he made a better version of it. That's all we know about Yesteel, basically.
He could have sneakily stolen the Secrets of Awakening swords just by spying on him, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, Returned can change shape, so he could be really good at that, right? That is a thing that's possible, right?
That actually feels really possible, that he's just really good at the appearance manipulation part of it.
Yeah.
That may be reading a little too much into the whole sneaky thing.
I mean, you're right.
Vasher does it, you know?
Vasher says and Nightblood says it.
No, I just mean Vasher also does it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He does have his low-key persona. So, and Denth.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I think you're attributing too much to Yesteel out of nowhere.
Look, Yesteel's like barely mentioned. Let me have this. But you're right. That definitely doesn't need to be the case. But like, it just seems weird that Nightblood would be like, man, both you and Vasher are really bad at sneaking around. Yesteel would be really upset with you. And it's just like, that's like one of the first times we get his name. Like that's the thing. It's mentioned in that context. It's like he was a
rogue.
That's one of the pretty much. He's the rogue of the Five Scholars.
Yeah, fundamental part of his character as we understand it.
Pretty much so.
Hey, what are the D&D classes of the Five Scholars?
Oh, that's very interesting.
Vasher.
Arsteel's a warrior.
Arsteel's a warrior. Yesteel's a rogue.
Which is not a class.
Oh,
fighter.
What a fighter.
Whatever.
Ian actually knows about D&D, yeah.
Shashara has to be one of the magic classes.
Yep.
Is Enchantress a
wizard? Wizard, I'd say.
Wizard is a class.
No, I know it's a class.
We didn't know about fighter.
It's an easy
I don't have
mistake
friends to play D&D with.
It's an easy mistake to conflate warrior and fighter. Okay.
Oh yeah. No.
Also, I play WoW, and WoW has warriors.
Yeah, me too. I have like almost two. Almost has warriors. It's like, you know,
really,
what I meant.
D&D is the only place where it's a fighter.
Yeah,
that is true. No one really says I'm a really good fighter.
Arsteel does.
I'm the best fighter out of all of us.
Let's talk about Arsteel.
Fine.
Arsteel's dead. Rip. It died just a bit before Warbreaker. That's true. Yeah, Arsteel and Yesteel, siblings again, also returned. Again, weird. Arsteel joined Denth, and Arsteel fought. Arsteel was trying to get Vasher and Denth to make amends which is hilarious that Arsteel thought that would be possible.
How the tables have turned.
Like, oh man, why would you think that? Arsteel, like, maybe I don't know.
Did Arsteel know that Vasher killed Shashara?
I feel
would
like
imagine Denth would immediately tell him.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, what happened to your sister?
It's like, oh yeah, Vasher.
You know how I hate
jackass.
that guy? Like, that's the reason.
He murdered him with Nightblood.
I could see him believing that there were extenuating circumstances because he did not witness it. Like, he's an outsider. So he's not as personally invested in the relationship there.
See,
yeah, true.
That sounds something. It sounds like something I would try to do, and I am a notorious dumbass.
I mean, he did die doing this, so it didn't go super great.
He was wrong.
Well, what happened was they came to blows. Arsteel didn't intend to kill Vasher in a duel and just wanted to subdue Vasher and talk sense into him.
And he is a much better duelist than Vasher, to be clear. Like, Vasher's kind of adequate. Yeah.
Well, Vasher is good.
Yeah, Vasher is good.
He's gotten lazy because he's had Nightblood. Arsteel is the best. Like, the literal best.
Yeah. Which you can see in Claude, which is also a pretty decent fighter for a lifeless. Those traits carry over.
Brandon has said Claude is the best lifeless swordsman in the entire world.
Like that was his scholarliness. Like, he studied fighting.
I mean, scholar of the sword.
We have no idea what Arsteel actually did. We know he was a duelist, but presumably he did awakening research too, because he was one of the 5 scholars. Right?
Like, they were specifically 5 scholars of awakening, not just a bunch of nerds.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, someone probably had to invent like the weapons of war that they were building, with like the catapults that were throwing stuff. That could have been a potential idea.
Yeah, I mean, before the 5 scholars, none of that stuff existed. So yeah, sure. Yeah. Right?
You know what's really depressing?
What's that?
There's so much like lore and history on Nalthis and in Warbreaker.
There is.
And there's so much of it we're not gonna get.
Yeah.
If
we're definitely gonna learn some things in Nightblood, but there's so much.
In doing research for this and rereading Warbreaker, I know a lot of people are like, what if you wrote an Alendi Roshar prequel novel in classical Scadrial? I mean, I do want to know more about classical Scadrial, but you know what I think would be a better book? A 5 scholars book, like the story of the Manywar, Vasher murdering Shashara. Like, that's one of those things that, like, even if you know that it's going to happen as a train wreck, you're still going to be heartbroken. Also, probably because it's going to be done better than Anakin murdering a bunch of younglings. But
and it's like that's like the perfect like instance of doing something like a graphic novel or an audio play.
A graphic novel that's colorful.
On Nalthis?
Really, yeah. Rather than sand. White.
Yeah, but it's a story, like, but like Brennan doesn't have to write out a full novel. Like,
I would agree.
He can just do an outline.
Yeah, and he can call it semi-canon. If he ever has to change anything, he can change it, but they can still kind of have a pretty cool story about it.
When you said sand, I just remembered when Hoyd tells the story of the house of the house scholars, of the 5 scholars in the Manywar. I don't know. The very beginning of the story when he's pulling out his sand and like storytelling tricks and things like that, Siri notices that the sand turns from white to black.
I feel like Brandon has said that this is like a completely like non-magical storytelling method, but I could be wrong.
No.
It's like it's usual. Like he doesn't use like he definitely doesn't.
I think it is though, Eric. Like I think he like learned it in a different place and like does it. Like I'm pretty sure it's just like it's all. Oh, maybe the sand is magic, but I think the rest of it is all just Hoyd throwing.
No, I think he uses some Yolish light weaving.
We've definitely been assuming that he does.
Well, regardless, the sand turns from white to black when in the presence of investiture. So
no, it gets it'd be the opposite.
It's draining.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Which is interesting.
It is interesting. with Arsteel, Jules is in love with him and still sleeps with him when Arsteel's dead. That's true.
Moving
That's
on.
canon.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's a fact. That's a fact we know about Arsteel.
It's a fact we know. Is it a fact we want to talk about?
No,
Yes, not really.
it's education for the readers or for the listeners who may have.
I want to talk about Steamy Zombie 6.
No, let's not. He was just killed a bit before Warbreaker, which is interesting. David, we were talking a while back how Vasher lost all of his breaths a bit before Warbreaker.
I was just thinking that it might have been in the fight with when he killed Arsteel, because we know he gave his breath to someone.
Yeah.
We gave his breath to Arsteel to make him have that spasm so he could kill him.
Yeah, right. At the prologue, he doesn't have any breaths, and he.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that just kind of clicked for me. Also, as we were saying, I think that's probably when he lost. His most recent big chunk of breath.
Yep, that seems very likely.
It does kind of cast a new light on Denth and his crew. Like, they've just had a very recent loss.
Yeah,
in that scene,
absolutely.
So, and all the things they're doing to counter Vasher. So, like, Arsteel's only been dead for a few months.
Yeah, it's very new. Jules remembers. It is very bitter about it, obviously.
And she's human.
Yeah, right. Let's talk about Denth then, or as he is known, Varatralides.
Or as I say, Varatralides.
What a weird name.
Yeah.
But that's what Nightblood calls him.
I've always assumed it's just like a name from somewhere else. Because it doesn't feel Hallandrish.
Yeah, but they were royals.
Well,
But also, like, there is a Hallandren guy named Tralades.
Yeah.
So,
to be honest, we've talked about what Denth did. We have also no clue what he studied. At all. He's just been a mercenary. That's what he's done.
Well, that's recently.
Well, I mean, yeah, we don't know what happened in the 300 years since the Manywar, but sounds like he has lots of regrets, and that life taught him that he has to do bad things, and he sees it as inevitable, basically.
Yeah. Thinking about Denth, I just get sad.
It is really sad. That's why the story of the
lot
Five Scholars is so cool.
Happened to him.
It's so sad. It's great. I love it. I want to see these characters suffer.
I think Brandon's annotations on Warbreaker, and specifically like one of Denth's moments, possibly towards the end, were the first time I heard or read the phrase that every villain is the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
And like to this day, whenever I hear, because that's not like a Brandon unique phrase.
No.
Different iterations of it show up here and there, but I always associate that phrase with Denth.
He's mostly working with the Pahn Kahl so he can get back at Vasher. Like, he doesn't actually care. He's just like, screw Vasher. I am killing him.
Yeah.
But like in his past, like he was trying to be the peacemaker. Like he wanted an end to the war. And whenever I like think about like Denth, it's like fan casting is a thing. One discussion I saw on like casting Denth in Vasher in particular was that like Denth would look like the traditional hero. Like you would look at him like think, oh yeah, that's going to be the main character, hero guy. And Vasher is like the one that would be like the bad guy.
Yeah.
But it just so happens that their roles are reversed.
Which is great. The role reversals in Warbreaker, really good.
Yeah. Which in like the way their characters are written is definitely like that.
Yep.
Do we know how Denth and Arsteel compare in terms of swordsmanship?
Arsteel is better.
I mean,
Arsteel's the best. Yeah.
I guess if we know that Arsteel is the best, then
yeah. And Brandon said that Vasher is better than like people say in Warbreaker, because he trains people on Roshar, and people are like, wow, he's really good at that. But it's just Arsteel's way better.
Yeah.
Denth is great, of course, but there's like we kind of talked a lot about his stuff. Like we don't really know a lot about his past and what he did.
Yeah.
I think, didn't we have one word of Brandon where essentially said when Vasher offers Denth to remove his memory, Denth almost takes him up on it.
Yeah, he
like
does.
he almost
He
says,
does.
"Take it away," which I think is kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah,
like, he's
but he
right.
just couldn't like live with himself with that, which is
yeah, and essentially there was a decent chance that if Denth had managed to kill Vasher, he would have just picked up Nightblood and let it kill him, and then just ended it all. So
there's kind of
not in a positive place.
There's kind of an implication that like maybe Denth knows about like these mental awakening commands. Like he knows that that's a class of things, but not that he can erase memories, because it's not like Denth believed that Vasher could do that. Like, so he clearly knows a lot of those things, but it's so hard to tell what things he did in the Manywar or as one of the scholars. Like, who the crap knows? It's so hard to say.
The 5 scholars, like the time they were alive and active and doing things, is so very reminiscent to me to like the Age of the Silver Kingdoms on Roshar, where there are all of these like fantastical high fantasy kind of things going on that we just don't get to hear about.
We just don't get to see.
Yeah. But it's way more recent than Silver Kingdom.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Only 300 years ago. So it's just like, it's so close.
So
yet
close.
So far away.
I'm digging a graphic novel if that was the thing. That's a good idea. I would read that for sure. I'd be very excited about that.
I was asking people in the Coppermind server for ideas for art, because I've been commissioning pieces, and Grace, our fantastic and dead investigator girl.
Yeah, that's right.
Suggested Warbreaker things, because the world is so like vibrant and vivid and colorful, and ever since then I've realized how little Warbreaker art we have, and 2, how very little of it actually capitalizes on just the colorfulness of the world.
Yeah.
Like, Warbreaker flies under the radar a lot more than it should.
Yeah.
It's like it always gets discussed like, oh, you should read Warbreaker before Words of Radiance, but it's not for like Warbreaker's sake. It's Words of Radiance's sake.
Yeah.
Or if someone brings it up, it's because there's a little bit more romance there than in other books.
Yeah, and it just doesn't get mentioned as much because people love to critique Elantris and talk about the things that they like and they don't like. And Warbreaker is a stronger book than that, but it also doesn't have like the heavy series continuity that we get with Stormlight and Mistborn.
Or like as far as like pre-Wheel of Time stuff, I think Warbreaker was written the best of like Elantris and Mistborn trilogy. Like I rereading it, I'm like, this is really good. Like it's not like Words of Radiance and Oathbringer, which like the prose is just like really good, right? But it's good. It's quite good.
Yeah. It's kind of like a little vision at like what Brandon's books might be like if he hadn't been thrown into the deep end of the Wheel of Time and kind of had his his technique and his ability to structure a series kind of fast forwarded a little bit.
Yeah. Any other like thoughts on the 5 scholars? Any other things you want to talk about?
I guess like the big thing we didn't really, it's pretty speculative, but the big thing we didn't really address at all is if we feel like the 5 scholars, based on probably mostly just Denth, Shashara, and Vasher are the ones we know most about, if they potentially fulfilled their mission or if they have not when they returned.
Right.
Because there's definitely like things you can point to as being like, oh, did Shashara return to create Nightblood?
Yeah,
did Vasher return to kill Shashara? Has Vasher done that yet? So that's kind of a big, I feel like Shashara returned to create Nightblood in my mind. But
that I think is safe.
I feel like Vasher, just knowing that Brandon always anticipated him being a Stormlight character, Vasher has not completed his mission because he has something to do in Stormlight and we don't know what it is, but it's going to happen eventually.
That's a very meta reasoning, but I think it's very valid. Like, because he was never a Warbreaker character because there never was
Warbreaker. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if Denth's purpose was to steer Vivenna towards Vasher.
Potentially.
Because without Denth, I don't know that meetup would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, yeah.
Another idea that'd be kind of a bummer, but Denth is just a bummer in general. Maybe potentially depending on what you think about whether or not the Manywar needed to happen for Nightblood to be created. Potentially, he came back to prevent the Manywar and failed.
That's true.
Because that would be kind of a bummer. And he was the peace guy, and he did not succeed in that.
Because sometimes purposes contradict each other.
Endowment is not the most consistent of things, right?
Yeah. She hedges her bets.
I like that a lot. I think of the three, I think Denth did not succeed. And if Vasher's...
Yeah.
If Shashara's mission is to create Nightblood, then great. If not, well, rip. But
Rip
I think
indeed.
Vasher is still... There's still a lot of possibilities with Vasher, though.
Agreed.
We've alluded to it, I think, but the five scholars are kind of the first Cosmere scholars.
Yes.
They're the first ones that really started delving into realmatics and stuff.
They're the ones who say invested.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who do before anyone else that we've seen in the Cosmere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, aren't they supposedly known on Silverlight as early? I guess they wouldn't probably be called Arcanists at that point, but
Pioneers.
Yep.
Which is pretty awesome.
Pioneered the way.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see Chris interact with Vasher, because I feel like that'd be like meeting a hero. You're just like,
Vasher, don't die yet. You got to interact with Chris. That sounds amazing.
To be fair, I think everyone
Archimedes
should
or
interact
someone.
with Chris.
It's like Archimedes or Plato almost. Early Cosmere's early scholars that laid the building blocks for a lot of what we know, but it's different. They never could have imagined what we've done today. They couldn't imagine a computer.
Well, right. That almost kind of makes me think that maybe Shashara wanted to share information about the Cosmere, and that contributes to her wanting to share knowledge and stuff, because they didn't hide all the facts that they discovered about the Cosmere, because clearly other Cosmere scholars know about it, right? In some sense.
And that's a principle that persists too. Brandon's talked about how Chris is there to Chris's whole thing is knowledge for knowledge. She's not hiding it. She's not, using it for interest. That's what she's about. So is an early precedent that potentially was set.
Yeah. Yeah. Rip Shashara.
Like me some Cosmere nerds.
Oh, yeah.
And for those of you wondering how they world hop, Endowment's perpendicularity is in Hallandren. And it's leaking.
Yep,
I feel like that is just not well known enough. I think it is so cool. Maybe it's just because I got that, but I think that is so cool.
We got that.
Yep.
We did.
And that's why the Tears of Edgley can only grow in Hallandren. It's
around the perpendicularity.
Because there's endowment god juice just in the ground there.
Yep. Cool. Well, I hope that if you forgot about these very important Cosmere characters, now you have a good overview of what happened and just kind of how awesome they are. They're really cool.
And if you want to know more about them, and go to signings and ask Brandon, hey, when is that Nightblood sequel coming out?
I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
The people want it. I have to write it.
But I just know it's going to be so long until we get Nightblood. But see, when he writes Nightblood, then we can actually ask five scholars questions, and Brandon won't just raffo it automatically. So that would be great too.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's spoilers for Stormlight back 5.
So you know what, guys? It's time for probably not Nalthian characters on Who's That Cosmere Character.
This character is from Roshar.
Menace.
Tien.
Tom.
Braze.
Void in drag on a horse.
It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character. Caw. All right, you guys know the game. You send a character and 5 clues to wtcc at 17shard.com, and we read out a clue, and everyone gets to guess, and they get to try and guess who's that Cosmere character. So, character number 1 is from Windle Runner.
I saw that
And
name.
yep. And clue 1, a classic.
This character's from Roshar.
This character is male.
The other classic.
Yes, of course.
Well,
I'm just going to guess Windle and get it out of the way.
No, it's not Wendell.
I will say Denth.
No, it's not Denth. Going with the classic. We talked about it on the podcast, so we're guessing it now.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just go obscure for fun since there's just so many options. How about, I'm going to say it wrong, Ope, Royal's male Sion that he has that means flower that floats around in Elantris a couple times.
No.
Yep.
And I don't.
Oh, well.
No.
There's a high chance that it could be that, though.
Clue 2.
It is Ope, actually.
Yeah, screw you guys. This character often gives advice.
I'm going to guess Father O'Mine
No.
from Elantris.
Oh.
I love how this is just where it's said.
How about Aishi?
No.
What about Kadash from Roshar? He gives a lot of advice that Dal doesn't listen to.
That is true. But no, it's not Kadash. Clue 3. This character is inordinately passionate about their craft.
What about Anden the sculptor?
No.
That's
Okay.
exactly who I was going to guess.
I'm gonna guess Yim.
No, it is not Yim.
Good one.
I don't think there are that many like craftsmen.
Are you trying to think of a name right now, Ian?
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to think of like a good person.
Oh, okay. Because I've got another Elantris idea, but I can't remember his name at all.
Yeah,
I just
so do
love
I.
how that's where it's all led to.
Well, because they need devotion to become an Elantrian.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. All right. I'll allow that.
Because there's like one of the first people Raoden recruits in Elantris is a craftsman. Like he makes the shoes out of leather, the book leather.
Oh, and the nails that he makes into
In the nails. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about the floor washer who washes every single.
I was also thinking about the same one. Yeah.
One of them is no. That I think that's a girl.
Goes to show how often we read Elantris right here.
I know Marishi is a name. I'm pretty sure. It's
I
a
also know
female's
Marishi's name.
but
Yeah.
Is that your
that's
guess?
going to be my guess.
It is not Marishi.
Oh, well. We should move on from Elantris.
Clue 4. This character is loyal to a fault.
Dalinar.
No.
I don't know his name.
What are you thinking?
I am thinking that one Elantrian soldier who was in Raoden's new Elantris, who when he was turning into a Hoid, his mantra was "Failed my Lord Spirit."
I know who it is.
I know the name.
Yeah.
I don't clearly.
How about I go with no, it is not that character.
Okay, that makes it easy.
That was Sealin, right, Ian? Right?
Saolin,
yes.
Saolin, yeah.
Yeah, it was. That's right.
Okay. My guess is clubs.
No, it's not clubs.
Okay.
Clue 5. This character went out with a bang. There will be a 6th bonus clue if you don't get it on this one.
Went out with a bang.
Is it
Ooh.
Talome, Wax's butler?
It is. It is Wax's
good.
butler.
He's been a character before.
Yes, he has.
Yeah, he is.
All
I guess
right.
he's loyal to Wax's uncle, I suppose.
Yeah, Wax's uncle,
Yeah.
not Wax, though.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would call him a craftsman.
I don't know what that clue is supposed to mean, to be honest.
I mean, he's a very good butler.
I
Maybe
think,
just like
That's not
devoted
a
to his job.
craft.
I think
Yeah,
he's
I think-
talking about tea, that he really liked
Mm.
making tea.
Oh, he does. That
I think
I see
that
what they
was
were going
that's
for.
referring to. I think that's what that's
Okay.
referring to.
But like being a craftsman is.
Well, it doesn't say that there's
It's
a
more
craftsman.
specific generally.
It's that he's passionate about their craft.
Okay.
Like, if
Debatable whether making tea is a craft in this
Mhm.
context.
sure, that's acceptable.
It's one of the duties at least in this scenario, of a butler.
He's very
But it's an
serious
art
about
form
teaming.
for him. He loves it. He
does
has the
really
best
like it.
keys. Yeah.
So this is the butler
Tragedy.
that tried to kill Wax and killed himself
Yeah.
doing it. In case you forgot.
In an
Now.
explosion.
Explosion.
That was a great scene. I was waiting for someone to do the time bubble with an explosion. I didn't think we'd get it so early.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Brandon. It's like, what about this implication? And then we get that. I was like, oh, great, thanks. This next one is sent in by Fire Moss, and this one is, who's that Cosmere deity?
Ooh,
Okay.
that's fun.
Yeah.
That's new.
And it says, this deity is associated with birds.
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 Is it Patchi?
It is Sachi.
Oh, I was
Yes.
thinking like schedule things.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I suppose
Hole in one.
It is associated. I mean,
like the archipelago is literally called the Pantheon. So I guess.
also they do worship, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not necessarily theologically attached to Patchi, but
Yeah.
There's an association.
Yeah.
What is an association?
What's a deity?
What is a deity? Is Vasher a deity? I don't know.
well, I'm kind of sad I got that. I was excited for the concept.
The
Oh,
other clues are, this deity has a plant named after it. This deity is worshipped by people known as trappers. This deity
That would have
is
been a giveaway.
yeah. This deity is in the Dromonod system, and this deity is only mentioned in the novella. So it's like, yeah, that definitely at clue 3. That's like, whoa, okay, that was really obvious.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you for watching. Follow us on 17shard.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube. Leave us a review on iTunes. And you can support us on Patreon down below. We'll get some more Awakening stuff eventually. And we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Peace.
And listeners, you're breathtaking.
Caw.